she's the one who coordinated the last discussion. She got everyone together. So thank you, Stacy, for the last one. And what we do is, what should we go alphabetically? So of course, hello to everyone. But I think, yes, Daniela knows she's going first. So yes, Daniela, you want to tell us about a little bit about yourself, and let's just get a little round going of introductions.
Okay, sure. So currently I'm the Ombuds here at Georgetown University. I serve all of our undergraduate and graduate students on the main campus and in GU Qatar campus as well. And I'm an anthropologist, a social cultural anthropologist by training. And I teach when I can, and I've been in the Ombuds profession for about 1.5 years now.
Perfect. So look, I hope I get my alphabets right, but I think Jared goes. Oh, of course, Garance goes first. After that, please.
Okay,
Garance.
thank you.
I have to get this right.
So, I'm a French mediator. I'm a partner of Mediation and Resolution. It's the first mediation chamber in continental Europe. It was founded by Claude Amar, who perhaps you know. I'm an environmental engineer and a real estate jurist, and I had various positions in these fields.
Perfect. Look, Elizabeth, you've written Liz there, so I'm getting you in letter. You should have gone in before that, but you're going to be Liz today because that's the way you like your name.
It's easier, yeah.
Okay. So, Kira, please. Am I still getting it wrong? Jared comes in first. Jared, I think this alphabetical thing is not working for me. So, and Caitlan, of course, she's coming later. We'll get her in. Hi, Caitlan. So, I think Jared, please.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jared Lee. I'm located in California right now, as I am an Ombuds for UC Irvine, where we serve faculty, staff, students, and also the medical center. Prior to that, I was more in the mediation field, so mediating for the courts, as well as community and divorce and family issues. And had gotten my background at the Strauss Institute for Dispute Resolution, where that kind of started me off on that path. So happy to talk here about mediation and also my role as an Ombuds.
Perfect. Good combination. That's a good discussion we'll have with you. Of course, Kira, please.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Kira Nurieli. I'm the CEO of the Harmony Strategies Group. So we provide a palette of dispute resolution options for organizations who are seeking dedicated, I guess, expertise in a variety of different things. So we provide mediation services. We also do conflict coaching, circle practices, and we are ombuds, external ombuds for organizations, generally small organizations who are not seeking a full-time ombuds, but who want a dedicated service on hand. So that's pretty much my background. We do a little bit of a lot of things, so that's why I'm particularly fascinated by the conversation for today. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for coming in. Liz, please.
Yes. Hi. Good morning, and thanks for inviting me. This is really fun. I'm Liz Hill. I currently serve as the Associate Director for the Ombuds Office here at the University of Colorado Boulder. I've been here for about 6.5 years. We're an organizational ombuds model. We serve students, faculty, and staff. Really, actually, if I'm being honest, really anyone that has a university concern. I mean, parents, contractors, really anyone can call us. And even if we can't help them directly, we'll help them navigate and get to the right place. I've been in Ombuds now for about 15 years, and I've served in different capacities. I started my Ombuds career as a classical Ombuds for the state of Arizona. It was one of the 6 US statewide programs. And then I served as a corporate organizational Ombuds for a company in Phoenix. Prior to that, my training is law. I was a tax attorney. And before that, my first career was hotel restaurant management. So I feel like all those skills and backgrounds somehow help in some way.
So it's going to be interesting. So we'll get some, but are we going to get some food with it or not? Or just your knowledge from the restaurant business? But of course, Liz put a post out saying this is her first time being live streamed. So that's
Mhm.
nice. That's nice.
Yeah, it is.
Caitlan, we're just going around introductions. So we'll get you in. Of course, you were C, which you should have come in earlier, but Stacy is coming in right now and then we'll come to you. Yes, Stacy.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see who I can see, and I'm picturing the people I can't see. So it's good to have this conversation today. Liz, I really resonate with what you're saying about all your past background, bringing you to the point you're at. I feel like that's a similar journey to mine. I work for a small consulting company called Dynamic Team Solutions. And Kira, we provide a lot of the services that you're talking about, mediation services, and not specifically, not only conflict coaching, but just coaching in general, and then also executive team. So we try to come in on the front end of conflict resolution to help before it needs the mediation and other services. And I'm aspiring ombuds like Jared. I came through Strauss and received my master's there. And one of my last courses was ombuds, and I loved all of my courses, but that was the course where I felt at home. And all of a sudden I thought, oh, all these things, I didn't know there was a place for this. I didn't know there was a job. And so I have just loved meeting all the people, hearing more and more about what Ombuds is and can do. And am hopeful to continue my journey in that way, but loving what's happening now. So it's a pleasure to be here today.
Perfect. Thank you for coming. Caitlan, please. But in terms of pronunciation of names, Garance is the only one that you might not be able to pronounce the way she's told us how you pronounce it. Everyone else, I think you'll be able to. So please if I'm getting Caitlan right, I don't know whether that's right or not.
You got it. Thank
Perfect,
you,
perfect.
Vikram. Thank you so much. And thanks for having me here. I'm happy to be here. And so, yeah, my name is Caitlan Hendrickson. I've been in the alternative dispute resolution field for over 18 years and in the Ombuds world for over 11 now. And so, gosh, yeah, and I came into the field as a mediator and a restorative justice practitioner. I managed a mediation clinic for law school for many years, and then eventually that transitioned into doing a variety of conflict resolution work within institutions of higher education, including Ombuds work. And currently I am the Ombuds for the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA. And I also have my my business on the side that I've had for a long time and do Ombuds consulting through that as well, and some other conflict resolution offerings. So that's a little bit about me. I live in the DC area, but currently I am in New Orleans. I've been here on business. So
perfect.
Great to see you all. Thanks for
what I'm going to do is just give me 1 minute to put out what we are doing here. This is what we're doing here, because what happens is I have this abrupt way of starting things, which I should not have. I should tell people what it's all about, but this is what we're doing. We're having a discussion on ombuds as mediators and mediators as ombuds. And this is not for you people. I think you people should know the topic. It's for the people who are watching otherwise. Okay, I hope you got the topic. So that's what we're talking about. And of course, Bina won't be able to come in because she had some work, and for Melanie, I don't know. But that's about it. I think everyone else is going to be here. I think Michelle was, trying to connect, but she came in, but didn't come in after that. So that's what it is. And 2 seconds more to just to put it out there that all information is available on mediatorvikram.com. So you'll find, just go there. This is mediatorvikram.com, and then lots of other things connecting. But important thing is there was a discussion on ombuds versus mediators on the last conference. Of course, Jared, Daniela, and Stacy were there. So that will be available on the YouTube channel. I think you can just search. Best is to just search. There's a schedule of various things happening. So this is how it is. I think I'm just don't want to waste your time. So let's all the information is there. So what we're going to do is, Caitlan, topic, ombuds as mediators and mediators as ombuds. So please start it off, and then we'll just go around. Yes, Caitlan. Caitlan, that's yours. Yes.
Oh, all right. I didn't realize I was starting us off here. Well, let's see here. I think I'm interested in hearing the experience that you all have in terms of, integrating mediation work into Ombuds work, for example, and thoughts that you have on that. I know a lot of mediators, or a lot of Ombuds use mediation, and I definitely have quite a lot in my career. But I, of course, came into the role as a mediator as well, and I know that there's some Ombuds who tend not to use mediation a whole lot, especially depending on the model that they're practicing under. So I personally have found it to be, a really important and valuable tool in the Ombuds toolkit. And a way that, of course, as mediators, we know the impact, the positive impact that mediation can have of really getting people together for important conversations in a safe place to be able to move forward in constructive ways. So what do you all think about how mediation fits within Ombuds work?
I think
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yes. No, I just wanted to put the background to it. We had that discussion, like I said, I don't know whether you people were able to watch it, that Ombuds versus mediators discussion. So look, for me, the idea was that let's just forget the words. The concept is that someone in an organization available to the organization, the work that they're doing, because look, it's been 50 years in the US, they've been talking about it, and I don't think it's reached where it should have reached. I think it's an important role, but is there something there which is being missed out? Is there something that is not being valued? Whatever. I mean, I'm just keeping it open. The idea being, that person in the organization, at the end of the discussion, maybe we'll be able to reach somewhere on it. What should be the role? What is something that people appreciate? What is that people don't understand? Is there a confusion that we're adding a word into people's vocabulary and maybe they don't know what it's all about? Whatever it is. I mean, this is like the general thing. I'm not taking a conversation in any direction, but I'm just saying the background was this because I think it's an important role. And it hasn't really been promoted around the world. The other side, we've got this ombudsman concept, which governments have started, which goes into a totally different direction. They become arbitrators. So that confusion is happening. So when you bring in a person with a role and you call it an ombuds, is it creating a confusion in people's mind? Because look, for me, I'm sure for all of you, word is not important. I think it's finally the role of the person within the organization. So what should be the role? Are people clear about it, not clear about it? And you people are the best to tell me, because here we don't really have this concept. In other parts of the world, it's not really there. Like I said, in the US itself, 50 years is a long time, but today also people really don't know the role as such. So in that background, Caitlan, do you want to say anything further? Otherwise, we can move forward. Is there something that... No, Daniela, please.
Okay. Gosh, well, in terms of what it should be, I mean, I think there may be a diversity of thought on that potentially, so I'm interested in hearing, I don't know if others have thoughts on that. I think that Ombuds plays a critical role in organizations. I think it's I hope to see the profession continue to expand quite a lot, and I'm happy to see that happening more and more, because the role that an ombuds is able to play in an organization is able to really help some things not fall through the cracks, help really supplement in meaningful and in human-centered ways some of the other, critical processes available for folks who are experiencing different types of concern and conflict within an organization. So the way that we're able to work with our level of confidentiality and informality, independence, impartiality, really creates a special type of place and space for people to go. And so I think it's personally that it's a very important role for organizations to integrate, and personally as well, I think mediation is a really important offering through the Ombuds office, or just that there can be different models of what that might look like within an organization, but being able to have mediation and Ombuds available
I think is important. And I think as we move forward in focusing on really meeting the needs of current and future generations in the workforce, I think it's going to become all the more important.
Perfect. Yes, Daniela.
So as you say, Vikram, not many people or a lot of people still don't know what an ombuds does. And today is Ombuds Day. So that's one of the reasons that we're here today. And it's always the second Thursday of October. And today in Georgetown and in Washington, D.C. area, it's a rainy day, unfortunately. But it's also a time to promote the ombuds profession and how we practice. So mediation for me is a smaller part of what I do on a daily basis. The majority of the visitors I have are, as I said, undergraduate and graduate students and faculty, staff, parents, alumni. As Liz said, they all somehow find us on a university campus. But the majority are individual visits usually, or individual visitors who come with their concerns. However, there are a lot of times I found where an informal mediation, I'll call it informal mediation to distinguish it from what I think the ombudsman who is ombudsperson who is an arbiter, or for instance, I just had the opportunity to see the ombudsman from the European Union who came to Georgetown to speak, and realize that she has a very different role from what the organizational ombuds does. So I am not an arbiter. When I do mediations, people may have come to an agreement, but I don't keep records of that agreement. And I'm not the person who holds them to those agreements. So for me, mediation is something that is very important so that people can understand each other's perspectives, especially when they come from different cultural backgrounds, when the power dynamics are so important here, especially on a university campus, and where all people can feel like their voice is heard. And I can just say here at Georgetown, there are the tensions that I see are a lot of times in student clubs and organizations. They are between faculty advisors and students, and also between supervisors and supervisees. So there are a lot of different spaces where these opportunities for mediation can happen. And I'm going to stop now. I can talk a lot more, as you can see, but I will pass it to, I think Garance is the next one. Is that right?
You always pass it on to me. The baton comes here, and
I'm
then I pass it.
sorry.
Look, you know
Mediator
this.
Vikram, I pass it back to you. I did this last time.
No, I tell you what. Yes, exactly.
Admonished.
Exactly. So look, I have to have a role to play somewhere, some role. Might not be important, but it's there. No, I'll tell you why it's coming to be, because of course, like you said, Ombuds Day. So are you going to sing Happy Ombuds Day to everyone? How does it work?
I don't think you want me to sing Happy Ombuds Day to
all
everyone.
of you.
I'll let someone else do it.
Look, does it go with the same tune of the happy birthday? I don't know how it goes. So Happy Ombuds Day to everyone. So yes, Garance, please.
Thank you. Perhaps it was just to pronounce my name, but it was an exercise. So I'm not an ombud, I'm just a mediator. And yes, the principal role of the mediator is to facilitate communication between the parties, and he helps them to reach a voluntary resolution to their dispute that is timely, fair, and cost-effective, and it's the same as ombuds, I think. But the mediator should never impose solutions or decisions, and he has no power to force a settlement. And perhaps it's a difference.
Okay, So because I tell you what, I think this is important what you just said. What is mediation? I think that is where maybe because look, thing is that there is a lot of discussion on what is mediation. People have their boxes that they put. So for me, I didn't put it out there. Every time normally in my symposium and all, I do put out this part of what for me, what is mediation, and that is how I look at it for whatever discussions I have. So again, this is available on mediatorvikram.com. This is a definition basically comes in from the Singapore Convention, because today at least 55 countries have signed it. So at least we have some definition out there. Otherwise, it was going in all places. So mediation is a process through which people in dispute attempt to reach an amicable settlement of the dispute with the assistance of a third person or persons lacking the authority to impose a solution. That is how simple we are going to keep it. The names, models, nothing that matters. Very simple. So that's how I'm looking at it. So it is, if some people say it's only facilitative, no, for me, it doesn't matter. We are keeping a very broad aspect of mediation there, however it has to happen. So I'm just putting it out there. So Jared, please. Okay, Michelle is here. She's finally come in. She's tried a number of times. Yes, Michelle, we started off, but if you want to just introduce yourself quickly and then we can move.
Hi, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon for various time zones. My name is Michelle Arbid. I work in the alternative dispute resolution and Ombud space. Currently work with FEMA. Hi, Caitlan. Nice to see you. I work with Caitlan, but in a sort of separate function. I also have a private practice in which I do conflict resolution work and some ombuds work for a local healthcare system near to me. So it's really great to be with you all. I'm so sorry for all the technical difficulties, but we're here now.
No issue. Now we have to figure out, Michelle knows Caitlan, Daniela knows Stacy, Jared knows Stacy, Stacy knows Daniela. Anyone else knows anyone else? Please, everyone knows everyone.
No.
Yeah, I know Kira, I know Caitlan, I know Jared. I know Stacy through LinkedIn because I see you on LinkedIn all the time.
Okay, so
yeah.
Who knows the maximum
I'm
number of
on
people?
your LinkedIn, Liz, too.
Okay, good. Yes, I see you too. Yes.
Okay, so basically Liz knows the maximum number of people as I can see. Is that how it is?
I will say I'm connected, I think, with Kira, I believe, on LinkedIn. We don't know each other, but a lot of new faces for me. So it's nice to meet everyone.
Yeah, good time to get to know each other. If you'll forget, the topic can come in later. Ombuds have been around for a long time. Mediators have been here for a long time. I think we should just get to know each other. Okay, so let's move to Jared. Please, Jared.
Sure. Well, in discussion between mediators and ombuds, I feel that ombuds, even from the short definition that you provided about mediation, it differs in when you engage people in conflict, who is engaged, and as well as the outcome that you may look for. Kind of the when part, I think Stacy may have mentioned this, but often as in mediation, it gets to a point where some legal action has already been taken. They're either already going to court. Even in community settings, there's usually a few steps that have already occurred before even mediation is taking. But with the ombuds role, I think sometimes it varies in where you engage people in their conflict. It could be at the very, very beginning before the conflict is really realized and people are just wondering if there is anything there, all the way to maybe people have started thinking about more formal processes. And then sometimes they're, even after the conflict is over, you're still working with them to see where they should go from there. So I think the when definitely varies from mediation. In addition to the who, you may not be engaging with just, two parties or more parties that are in a conflict. As it was mentioned, you may just be helping coach one. There's also stronger elements of training in which you will be doing large groups of people that are not necessarily in conflict, but you're trying to promote conflict competencies throughout an organization. And then also the outcome you're looking for may be a little bit different. In your definition, Vikram, it looked like it said to reach a settlement. And I think that definitely happens in mediation where you're trying to get to agreement of some sort. Whereas in ombuds, getting to an agreement is not always the end goal. In fact, it's not always quite the focus. It could be to advocate for a fair process. It could be to expand people's resources or knowledge. It could be to help them be able to make informed decisions and working people through that. And so I think those are some of the key differences that end up making it look different, when in reality, I think on the day-to-day, the same types of skills of listening, of being able to negotiate, to speak with people and ask really thoughtful questions remain very key and similar between mediators and ombuds. So I feel like that's where some of the differences and similarities are. And I hope that ombuds becomes more of a prevalent role in a lot of organizations, because I do feel, as you had mentioned, that it is often overlooked in its importance. And maybe that's because of its confidentiality. Maybe that's because of that a lot of ombuds have very small offices and don't have a lot of resources or the ability or maybe the knowledge to market themselves. But regardless, I do think that it would be great to see it expand in the future.
Because Jared, the thing is that last discussion we were having, which was a ombuds versus mediators discussion. Here, my idea was that the aspect of mediators as ombuds, because sometimes it seems that they're totally different areas. Some people feel they're totally different areas, and some people feel, yes, they are doing mediation. So the idea is that let's see how mediators can be ombuds and ombuds can be mediators. And for me, it's basically more, like I said, for people to be, or maybe accept that position a little more as to what's happening there. Are we supposed to? I have no idea where this has to go, really. It's just because for me that concern is going to be that it is not taken off. And here I'm of course creating it in a different way. I don't want to use the word because, like I said, we have an insurance ombudsman, arbitration, banking ombudsman, all these. It's just taken that word I don't want to use. So I'm trying to just put in a position there, and I of course am going through that. I have this World Mediation Circle, and I'm creating mediation circles in every organization. So I'm just trying to put in what should be the role of that circle itself, or what all is happening there. So in a way, I'm picking up from there. So I don't know if it makes sense to any of you, but I'll elaborate if you if you ask me more questions on it. Yes, Kira, please.
So I think you bring up some interesting points, because one might ask, what makes someone a good mediator and what makes someone a good ombuds? And and by the way, of course, there are those different styles of mediators, and there's different formats for ombudsing, right? So what makes someone perhaps a good mediator in one area may not be a match for a certain type of ombudsing, but maybe for a different type of ombudsing, right? So and vice versa. So it is an interesting conversation, because there are many people who are very established mediators who are more transactional and work more in corporate mediation, working with legal documents and coming to fine tune, settlements that are, again, more about the financial arrangements and the legal documentation. That's not necessarily a match for what organizational ombuds do, for example. So it really depends on not only the mediation practice that is, let's say, going to be transitioning into an ombuds kind of a space, but also the individual mediator and what their comfort level is. As Jared pointed out, in ombudsing, we often have conversations that don't necessarily end with a tied with a bow of a nice, resolution, and we don't necessarily even know what happens next after we've met with, let's say, an individual and talked with them through what they're facing. So some people who really focus on that settlement piece as mediators to feel like they've done a good job may feel very uncomfortable as an ombuds, because you don't get that satisfaction, so to speak, as part of your role. There are other things where that we find, or at least I should say for myself, I find very gratifying about being an ombuds, but it's not necessarily about the resolution, the agreement, the solution, so to speak. So I think it's up to individual mediators to decide for themselves, how much do they really feel that need and that focus on, putting together a solid written document, let's say, lasting resolution, as opposed to being more comfortable with the gray area of sort of helping open up those lines of conversation, maybe helping people address their underlying needs, but not necessarily directly being involved in a formal resolution, so to speak, something that is, again, documented, et cetera. So that's where it just really depends on the individual and what their interests are. And that's something that can be very confusing, I'd say, for organizations then to understand when they are looking for an ombuds. I have found, at least, again, I'm an external ombud, so I work with organizations, and often when they're looking for an ombuds and they want to hire an ombuds, they're not clear themselves what an ombuds is. So we end up in a funny situation where we're not only interviewing for a role, we're also informing them about the role. So and so I love that we have this panel, because I think people are much more familiar with the idea of a mediator, not necessarily as familiar with the idea of an ombud. So platforms such as this, where we're discussing it, can help inform public with, what exactly is a mediator, what exactly is an ombuds, and of course, understanding there are different styles to each. But because there's no national or international certifying body, it can be very vague and confusing.
I think you picked up interesting points on this aspect about people not being familiar with the role itself. So I think that's what one at the end of it maybe can be put across, the role as such. And in that role, then what is it that the mediator brings in, and what are the issues that a mediator faces? Like you said, there is a mediator. Of course, I'm not saying all of them are like that, but you have these transactional ones, which of course I am trying to move away from. I put out this whole thing where moral values and humanistic approach and all that, those are important aspects of mediation for me, because I don't want to go through it with you people, but I put out a lot on that aspect. So for me, that part of mediation is what I understand as mediation. Of course, the other one will exist. So now if you say a mediator, for you, some people, it will be that transactional person. Will that person fit into this whole I don't know, in this role or whatever the whole ombudsing is happening. So this is, I think we need to also, maybe discuss that part, but let's get Liz in, and let's then.
Yeah. So I was trying to take notes, because number one, I love and appreciate everything that everyone has said so far. And I was trying to take notes because I wanted to build upon, some of this, and it's all become a jumbled mess. So forgive me if I ramble, but I want to go back to number one. Yes, it's Ombuds Day, and just a reminder that it really is a day. Yes, celebrating and uniting us as a profession is great, but it's really a day to do exactly this, right? So I thank you. I applaud you, Vikram, for doing this, to educate and raise awareness about, what are ombuds? What are the different models? What are the different roles? What values do they bring? And why should all CEOs out there and public officials and legislators be implementing, more programs? So, this is great. And I want to go back to something Kira was just talking about, and I think it's true, we do get stuck on words. So Vikram, I appreciate you pointing that out, because yes, just like the word ombuds and ombudsman is so confusing, because there are different models, there are different roles. And if I say, oh, I'm an ombuds, I don't know what's going through that person's mind that I'm talking to. They might be familiar with long-term care ombuds, which is not what I do as an organizational ombuds, right? So I think the educational piece is important, get away from just using the terms and really, as Kira was getting at, doing some education, and probably I'm guessing this is how you do it in your interviews, Kira, asking questions to really understand, what is their understanding? And more importantly, what do they want? What are they looking for? Because people will call me and say, oh, we want to have an ombuds program. Can you help us think through what that will look like? And I'm first well, what are you looking to achieve, right? What's the purpose? What are you hoping to get out of it? Because I'm not going to try to sell you an organizational ombuds program if you want someone who's going to investigate. And you want someone who's going to write a formal report, because that's not what we do as organizational ombuds, right? So really understanding what they're looking for, because you're right, Kira, especially I'm guessing in your space, the people who are hiring the ombuds, don't know all these nuances, don't know these differences, may not understand that what they want is one model versus a different model and the different attributes. Now, going to what Vikram's getting at this mediation ombudsing, I mean, I became a mediator after I became an ombuds, right? So I had no mediation training before I became an ombuds. I have taken many different mediation trainings and learned different styles and different tools since becoming an ombuds. But as a classical ombuds, even though we took mediation training, that wasn't really what we did, not in the sense of what most people would consider mediation. As an organizational ombuds, I do, and we do, back to what Daniela said, call it informal, because we're not focused on finding an end, getting to an end agreement, you know, or we don't put anything in writing, right? It's voluntary, it's informal, it's off the record, all of those things. So really, I think what people have said, it rings true for me. It's really helping people facilitate a conversation, having an opportunity to fully express themselves, to have an opportunity to fully be heard, and to achieve whatever it is they need to achieve, right? It's up to them to determine that. But when I was listening to Kira, it made me think, well, what are the skills and attributes that serve someone well in these roles? And I think there is a lot of similarity across the board, right? We need to be ombuds and mediators, really, regardless of the model or the sector or the style, right? Really need to be people who can quickly, right, establish rapport with people, can quickly establish trust and credibility. Yes, a good listener, that helps. But all of those things are skills and attributes that I think would serve whether you're in a mediator role or an ombuds role, and I don't think it matters what style. And I'll finish up by saying, I was laughing when you were saying some people are better suited for one style or approach than another. So not only do certain styles and approaches fit different situations, but also the people doing them. I laugh because I attended the Pepperdine's mediating a litigated case. I was curious more about learning like that commercial, the legal mediation world a little bit more. And long story short, I was at lunch during that program with one of the judges who was attending, and he leans over to me and he says, "Liz, I don't think I'm cut out to be a mediator," because he was learning that as a trained judge, like he's used to, right, listening and then making a decision for people. And that's not what mediators do, right? And so he was coming to that self-awareness of maybe this isn't the best fit for me because I really don't have the skills for this. Another story is I overhear my husband, who's a civil litigator, on the phone now that we're, working remote so much. And I hear him he'll be like, "Oh, Liz, I have a mediation today." Okay. And I go in to get my lunch or whatever, and I can hear them upstairs on their, Zoom call. Right? I mean, yes, it's, it's more the evaluative mediation style, but really what they're doing is like a settlement conference, right? You've got a mediator going back and forth, talking numbers, to try to find a number that they can all agree to, right? So anyway, I know hopefully he's not watching this because he'd get mad at me for saying that, but but that's, those are some of my thoughts as I listen to what everyone's sharing. I'll stop there.
So Liz, you can be happy that yes, it is going live, and all the good things about going live, that he is going to listen to it today, tomorrow, or one of those days. And the other good thing is you don't have to destroy your notes like you normally do. You don't have to destroy them because it's already out there. No, but I think the one thing that, of course, I mean, I keep talking about this training aspect and mediator and training, and also I'm totally off that aspect because this is a skill that I talk about. People have that skill, that mediator mindset. That's what is the important thing. So I'm here also when I talk about mediators as ombuds, I'm talking about people with the mediator mindset. And I think what I can see from the ombuds part, because I know from the mediation part, it is a elephant in the blind man situation. So like what your husband does and the people who experience it, for them, that is mediation. There are judges in the US where it all started from. Those people do that. That is what they do in mediation. So people think that is mediation. Now, what I've been trying to put across is that why mediation has not taken off? is it that people don't want that process? Because mediation itself also, I mean, today, I mean, okay, if you watch my shows, you will hear this a lot of times, so let me repeat it. If in the US, after 45 years of what they say, formal mediation happening, if you still put in 100 million cases into the courts, there is an issue somewhere, and a lot of countries can't afford to do that. They can't put in that many. If 300 million population, if 100 million cases go into courts, there's an issue somewhere. So I'm trying to figure out both aspects of it. Of course, for mediation is where I am trying to focus, but I'm saying this ombuds, the whole the profile, what it entails, and I think that what you said is, let's ask people what they want. I think that's what, and then work out a role, maybe a model role. Maybe it's an academic exercise. No one can take it against us. Let's do an academic exercise and say, all your experience, what is it that you have found that people have appreciated? What do they want? Let's put all that list, and Liz is good at taking notes. Anyone else is good at taking notes. Please take those notes. And at the end of it, we'll compare as to see what are you people looking at as what the role should be, and what other people are looking at as what the role should be. So of course we'll move, but Stacy, can Michelle come in? Because alphabetically she comes in first, but she came in later. So if you say it's all right, she comes in. Okay, Michelle, please.
Thank you. And thank you, Stacy, for your grace. Oh gosh, there's so many things that I want to say. And like Liz, I've taken sort of notes all over the place, and I'm now going to attempt to sort of string them together in a coherent way. And also acknowledging that I did come in late, so hopefully I'm speaking to the appropriate topic. But I think there are a few things that really stick out to me in this, or stand out to me in this conversation. And as you say, mediator mindset, I think many of us ask, what does that really mean? And that's come up in this conversation, but in our work in general. And I think that one thing that's really important for me is the idea that what we are taught as practitioners also teaches us bias. And it not only teaches us sort of implicit bias that impacts how we do our work, but I think it also gives us bias towards what that mediator mindset should look like. So I don't think any of that comes from a vacuum. Partially it comes from what we're taught or not taught. And then how we go out into the field and apply that, learn from that, agree with it, disagree with it, etc. But I think that that is so much at the root, which is why something like Ombuds Day is so important. It is an opportunity to educate folks of various backgrounds and sort of practices and professions and interests about what Ombuds is, but it's also an opportunity, I think, for us to sort of highlight for ourselves where we might need to sort of focus some attention in our own practice. And so with that idea, I think that relates deeply to authenticity, which then relates to what type of practitioner any of us are going to be. I don't know that there's one right type of mediation or ombuds, and so I don't know that there's one right way to define the difference and similarity. I think many of the folks that have already spoken have in some way touched on that too, so I don't think I'm saying anything new. But I think where that is important is really twofold. One, to say that mediation as a skill set, I think, is a composite, and it's never in isolation. I think it's a composite of skills, things that have already been mentioned: listening, building rapport, reframing, being present, etc. But that's always auxiliary to something else. And so it always sort of is attached as a satellite in some way to some other set of skills that we've learned. And we bring that to the work that we do, whether it's as mediators or in the role specifically of an ombuds. I think that that difference can be hard to define depending on what space we're coming from to the world of conflict resolution. And so if I am an attorney coming to the space of mediation, conflict resolution, ombuds, whatever my sort of entry point is, typically mediation, I think, for attorneys, that is going to make a huge difference about how I define mediator mindset. Versus if I come, let's say, from a social sciences background or from a background of therapy or public policy. So all of those experiences are going to teach us, and they're going to sort of bias how we view the separation and similarity of ombuds to mediation. Now, that said, what that brings me to next is, again, trying to sort of tie all these thoughts that I have together. What was mentioned earlier, I think, by Kira, around this conversation that many of us have with folks who want to open an ombuds office for the first time. Saying, well, what is this really about? Not only what is your goal, well, what's driving this? Where is this desire all of a sudden coming from? Is this an interest in, for example, in higher education? Is this about serving the students to have the best experience? Or is this about maybe something has bubbled up that's really bad that we want to manage in some kind of way? And so we pull in an ombuds office. All of those things bias how folks think of an ombuds role, especially if they've never worked with an ombuds before. So I think that sometimes the role of an ombuds or a mediator is to know the difference between those things and where they overlap, sort of like a Venn diagram to me. There's conflict resolution in one circle. There's ombuds in one circle and mediation in one circle. They have there is so much overlap, but there are some things that are distinct. And so the question that I find myself sometimes asking these folks in these conversations, whether it's in an interview capacity or in a sort of more consulting capacity, is, are you looking for an ombuds office and what does that mean to you? Or are you looking for an ADR office? Are you looking for someone to make those decisions sometimes, to have that administrative approach in some circumstances and then use informal when appropriate? And I think that understanding where the desire to have an ombuds comes from, or sort of what's motivating bringing in an ombuds office in that circumstance when it is a new office or a new program, is really important to figuring out what that difference could look like for that circumstance. So I think it's all circumstantial. I think some of it is about how we define success in our process too. If I'm a mediator coming in as an evaluative mediator, my definition of success is so different than somebody who's coming in as transformative, let's say. And ombuds really may have a different, I think it was mentioned earlier, that this comfort with the gray space. Whereas some mediators, if they are coming, let's say, from that more evaluative space, are not as likely or may not be as comfortable with that gray space because their definition of success is different. And so I think part of what we're looking at here is, what is the definition of success? And to me, for an ombuds office, I think that looks very different in scope and breadth than what a mediator's definition of success might look like. Hopefully some of that strung together in a coherent fashion, but those are some of my sort of reactions and thoughts to everything I'm hearing. And I'm grateful that we're having this conversation and able to share it with folks to say, what else do we need to think about? What else do we need to talk about to make sure people can be aware?
Perfect. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think while Stacy is talking, all of you are going to, I've understood where we're going to take this. All of you are going to answer after this. Why? On the ombuds. Why, what, who, how, when, and where. Let's take all of these things, but I've understood why is something Michelle has picked up, and that's important. Why do you have that? And of course, what, who, because who, in the sense of that mindset, or what are you, that person is bringing in, so that part of it, and how, of course, the process. Again, the same thing of coming from what is it that people want. With all your experience, what feedback have you got? And when, one Jared spoke about what stage are you doing it? In that sense, something that Jared about the fact that things have already escalated to a point, and that's when you bring in a mediator kind of thing. But what stage are we looking at this happening? And where, again, the where part of it, I'm just looking at it from the aspect of the whole concept of an in-house thing. And I do now look at that external ombuds also, which that is something which they were outsourced ombuds is how that term is used. So is that something good, bad, ugly part of it? Let's open it. There is no restrictions on to where we have to go. We can go anywhere. So Stacy, please.
So I don't want to speak for all of us, but I will now be the third person to say taking notes. And these are actually really neat for me. Usually it's all up and around. And so that makes me very happy that I'm with crazy note taking people, like crazy notes. So that makes me happy. And I think as I'm listening to all of this, something that kind of keeps coming back into my mind is the underlying purpose. And I love that you're asking what do people want, but for me, I'm also playing into there what is needed. And there's so many different needs. There's the needs of the individual coming in, and then that will grow into the needs of all the other people who come into the situation. But then there's also the needs of the bigger organization, whatever it's a part of, whether it's an internal situation or with an outsourced ombuds, that organization that they're working with. And then there's those broader cultural needs, and how do those drive what is going on. So it shouldn't just be what people want, but what is needed in that situation. And that gets tricky because we're all going to have a different assessment of that depending on those biases that Michelle was talking about and other things. And I want to just quickly insert here, I am very aware of, I'm coming from this positionality as an American, and I'm coming through a certain mindset. So I'm seeing it differently. And I know that this is a worldwide mediators and ombuds, this is worldwide, and it could look very different in different contexts. So Garance, I'm so glad you're here and mediator Vikram to like temper that part where I'm coming from such a narrow place of understanding. But I think where my mind keeps going back into is both for mediators and ombuds, this is an participatory process that you opt into. Like that is just foundational, that this is something someone chooses, and all along the way there's that respect given for their personhood and the personhood of the others who are in there, respect for the situation, but also what they're comfortable with going forward in, and to have them opt in and not to agree to it from pressure, but to really choose to be in there. That doesn't always happen, but that really is the goal. And so to me, there's this underlying question of equality and governance. And I think that's why, that may be part of why it's not just exploded, because we're coming into these contexts of government organizations, academic organizations, business organizations, that have these structures. And at the very nature, this hierarchical structure is going to kind of fight against this idea of everyone's equal personhood. So there's a tension there that I think is really important that we deal with all the time, because when we're in an ombuds or a mediation situation, there's this idea that everyone comes in equal, but there are these things at play that make it unequal. And that's just part of what we all deal with. So I'm not going to tie anything with a bow. I'm going to leave this in gray space and unresolved, but I just kind of want to throw in there that is something that's really playing through my mind is how do you hold all these tensions in place and keep coming up with this idea that we all have a role to play, and it matters very much, and it should. I'm coming from a transformative mindset here, but it should be transformative. It should start showing. And for me, at this time in the U.S., at least, I'm seeing more awareness that is needed, that organizations are willing to put money into a place that can start addressing these needs and concerns that may directly impact how they do business, what their jobs look like. And I don't know that readiness has been there in the last 50 years in the same way. And we've seen ebbs and flows with economy and with mindsets and rules. But for me right now, there's just a much more, it's showing there are higher needs. It's harder to deny it. And it's also a lot easier for people to come along and not criticize having that role, paying money for that, and seeing how it really helps us all. So I will stop there, but that's kind of where my mind is going as I listen to all this.
Well, like you said about the fact that coming from the US kind of thing, same thing with mediation or with ombuds. Of course, people say this formal concept of mediation came from the US, and I'm trying to open up this entire discussion. So I had that symposium on indigenous peoples and mediation. And of course, the last one on colonization, decolonization, and mediation. And before that, mediation in our culture and traditions. The idea being there's a box of mediation, which, of course, the US maybe created a certain box, and that is being sent around the world. And I just feel that the kind of things that you people, of course, also said, the transactional aspect, the settlement meeting and all that, some people look at that and that box goes everywhere. So I'm trying to create a different aspect of mediation. I just put out again that World Mediation Circle that I was talking about, the why part of it. to bring a moral values, principles, and ethics-based humanistic approach to dispute resolution, where heart, soul, spirituality play an important role. Now, when you read these things, you don't say this is mediation. You say, oh, who does this in mediation? Where does this fit in? But for me, it fits in. So that's the way I'm opening it out. Same thing with ombuds. The US, you talk about 50 years. So I don't want, and it's good for all of us that that box doesn't go out if that box did not work, or is this the box that people want? So we're just having this discussion based on that. So what we send out or whatever goes out as that position or that role, whatever the word is going to be, we'll move forward on the word. But let's just look at the first thing, the why. So we just go around on the why. So get in why that role. Why do people want it and why should they have it? So please.
I guess I can jump in here.
It's for you, Caitlan. It's for you. It starts with you. Everything starts
yes.
with
yeah.
you.
Okay, we're going.
You're the C here. You're the C here. Everyone is after you. So please.
I see. Got it. Okay. Thank you. So the why. Ombuds fill, I think, as I mentioned before, a unique role. And one thing I think I didn't mention was the one aspect that is very specific for the ombuds role versus mediation is the ability to really work on the systemic level as well. As ombuds, we're able to be, depending on the organization, but the role in general should be able to be very nimble in terms of working all the way from the individual to small, large group, departmental, organizational, systemic level concerns and issues. And so our work on the kind of smaller levels in terms of individual smaller groups really helps to inform the types of trends that are happening throughout the organization to then be able to work on that level as well in raising different types of systemic trends and issues that are perhaps impeding the organization and moving forward in alignment with their values, with their stated priorities, with their the critical mission related work. There can be a variety of different types of issues and matters that can really hamper an organization's effectiveness in really carrying out its mission. So that I would say is an important aspect to highlight in terms of the why that an ombuds is really able to work with such a wide variety of different types of concerns and issues that come up, and with the unique nature of the high level of confidentiality and the safe space that creates, that matters that otherwise may go unaddressed in an organization can be raised because it's a space that folks feel they can go to with really difficult concerns and issues, and we can help serve as a bridge to other offices and other processes. Sometimes folks don't know if they want a formal process or an informal process or no process, and so we can be a really safe place to start to talk through what's going on and what the different options and resources are, so that they can make an educated decision on how to move forward and what that looks like for them. So I think that's a really important aspect to highlight. And I think I'll pass the baton off with that. I have a couple other thoughts, but I don't want to take up too much airtime.
Good, Caitlan. If you were in a relay race and you did not give the baton to anyone, I think that would have been a problem. You have to pass it on. But only thing I'm hoping that Liz, Michelle, and Stacy are taking notes. At the end of it, you have to tell us the why separately. Yeah, so the why. So Daniela, the why.
So I guess I'll say, why not? I mean, what happens when you don't have an ombuds? And, that's what we had here. For instance, in my organization, we did not have an ombuds for students. And going back to Liz's and others, when they mention, why does an organization decide to have an ombuds? Oftentimes it's because, there are changing cultures in the organization. There are issues that happen. There's a pandemic that happens, which really affects people at an individual level and the organization at at a systemic level, we see that people have left their organizations for a variety of reasons. And the why is really in order to make sure that people have a safe space where they can talk about issues and concerns that they may not have any other place to go to. I mean, so that is the why for me. And the why is also that we're in an organization, we usually have so many different people with a variety of lived experiences. We're talking people from, many different countries, especially at a university, from many different socioeconomic backgrounds, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, ability, the list goes on. So all of these issues are something that can be addressed in the Ombuds office when conflict arises, because people are coming together from a lot of different points of view with all the many perspectives that they have.
Yes, Garance. Garance, I don't know whether I'm getting it right. Garance, please, the why. Okay, but this one we're going to do when you're going to speak about it, lip reading, we'll do later. That's the second session we're having on this, only on lip reading. So you'll have to unmute yourself, if you don't mind. Yes, Garance, you'll have to unmute yourself. It'll help. Yes, you can do it. It's not tough.
Is it okay?
Yes, now you've disappeared, but yes, we can hear you. Now you're also back. Yes.
Yes. Why should people talk to a mediator? Yes. Is that the question?
Yeah. Why?
Just to have a win-win solution to the conflict, but indeed they don't know that they need a win-win solution at the beginning. And the first quality, the first skill of the mediator, it's listening. Stacy, you were talking about the needs, and the mediator works on the interests of the parties and all the interests, and then the pie goes bigger and bigger, and the share is easier. So the work on the interests is very important.
Okay. Now here, because we're talking about the role of the ombuds in organizations and why that should be there, and of course the why of the fact that why the mediator comes in, or the mediator mindset comes in, we'll maybe have a look at that also. But Jared, before you, Kira is coming in, because she thought it was, I don't know why she thought that is going to be only an hour. It never happens, Kira. The last one, it was supposed to be an hour, it went on for 2 hours. So time is never going to be a factor. So you want to come in, please come in. I hope Jared won't mind. So Jared, it's okay. Kira comes in. Yeah, please. Yes, Kira.
Yeah, so I think what I tell people is that conflict is always a place of uncertainty, and humans want control and certainty because that's what's safe, right? From an evolutionary psychology perspective, like uncertainty was always a place where we could find threat. So we want control, we want certainty, and conflict by definition is a place of uncertainty. We don't know where it's going to go. So I tell people that uncertainty hurts, it's uncomfortable. And what mediators, coaches, ombuds, even restorative justice circles, processes, what these provide is an opportunity for it to hurt a little bit less, right? Our services are intended so that rather than be constantly with those, voices in our heads of what should happen and what needs to be, and those frustrating voices, our, special sauce is to help people process through that so they're not stuck in such suffering and such pain, right? Whether or not they come to the exact resolution they're looking for, they don't necessarily need to be in such struggle, certainly internally, as much as they more often than not are. I mean, that's why they come to mediation typically, or again, or coach even, or circle practices, because there's some sort of healing that they're seeking in addition to the resolution. And so that's really the why, and from my perspective. And what that leads to in just dollars and cents for an organization is that people are more productive. If they're really stuck in frustration and angst, they're not going to work well as a team. They're not going to be putting their best efforts in. They're just going to be, just checked out from the work environment. And you're just not going to get as strong a work effort as if they're really coming with a, relatively, clear mind, relatively not suffering or overwhelmed with angst. So, sometimes I'm talking with people who are very much about, the dollars and cents and how do we afford this thing? And the idea is, well, how important is profitability because you have a functional working force? That's up to you, right? If you want that. But the idea is this is the investment so that you can maximize your workforce engagement.
No, but and also you want to go beyond that as to why the people who come into that process, why have they come in? Why did they think that this process works? What was it in their mind? Let's just look at from their mind, because one is on the other side that we say, oh, these are very good things and you must use it. And that's what between mediators, that's what happens. I'm sure between Ombuds also, we all very nicely talk about the process. But the user, finally, we have to look at the user. So what does the user think? Why is the user coming into it? So we'll also need to.
So, yeah. I mean, I would use the, Buddhist language of suffering, because we have stories in our minds that are creating suffering. And we're looking for someone to help with that. Now, that's not necessarily what they would say when they come in, like, hi, I have and I'm feeling emotional angst, and I'm suffering from that. But rather, they'll come in and say, this person's a jerk or that person's terrible. But the bottom line is they may be whoever they are. The challenge is, how is it affecting you? And if you are suffering and struggling with that, right? What are the options? How can we move forward then? Yeah, it may be that the other person changes, but even if the other person doesn't change, some of the ways that we help is for people to unpack how they are affected by the situation and to consider what options may be out there. Again, maybe practical options, or maybe even just switches of the perspective and mindset.
But at all points of time, Kira, you have to look at it from the perspective that mediation is also and can be a healing process. So
absolutely,
that's what I'm also putting out there. So that's something there. So that's why the why part of it also, because if you are going into something where, yes, you are looking at this outcome, but you're looking at it differently from a person you going to a person with the mediator mindset, or you're going into mediation. That we should not distinguish it on the basis of what people understand the process to be. I mean, let's open out on that aspect of what a mediator does a little more than what people understand that to be.
I think that suffering that I'm referring to can be, whether it's mediation, it's in restorative circles as well, when there are multiple people. And the idea is that there can be multiple people who are struggling. I'm using these language, struggling, suffering. It could be something, people can choose whatever term works for you. The idea is that it's like hijacking our minds and our sensibilities and our cognition.
Yeah. Jared, why I'm asking her these questions here is because she wants to leave in the next 7 minutes. So I thought let's bring in her input as much as we can. And I think we've got a lot of input from her, so we can move to Jared now. Yes, Jared, please.
Great. When I think about the question why, what pops into my head is something that comes up in mediation a lot, which is simply interests and needs. One of the definitions of conflict that I really like is that conflict is simply situations where people's interests are not being met. And I think that creates the why for both mediators and ombuds. They're filling a need where people need to be heard, but maybe not to everyone, and specifically just to someone who could keep it confidential. People need to understand what situation they're in without someone taking action on it. And I think when people start thinking about where can I do to do that, they may not find that in the organization that they're at, and they may not know where to go to get that need. They may not know that a lot of those needs could be filled by an ombuds role or sometimes by a mediator's role. But I think that is created in people's mind of, well, where can I go? And I think a lot of organizations are realizing that sometimes people do not have a place to go in order to have these needs met when they don't have an ombuds office. And as a result, you see organizations, maybe when a really large and public issue has come up, a really great disruption, great conflict that happens within a university, within a company, within a government organization, in which they start realizing, oh, well, something bad really has happened. People's needs haven't been met. People have been leaving. People have been getting upset with management. And I think that's where the organization's needs start to come in too. They have needs of, we need someone to be able to address some of the cultural issues within our system or our organization at a level that people are comfortable with and that they can trust. And they look around and they say, well, who can do that? And if they don't find that, and they realize that, perhaps that could be an ombuds or someone hired out that is dispute resolution, such as more of a mediator role, then I'm hoping that that's what they go to, and that's how the profession can grow. And so, to me, I feel that, why do people need it? I think there is specific needs that ombuds and mediators alike can address, and that when organizations go to look for that within themselves, they don't often find that. I think many of them are realizing that now, and many, let's say, universities are looking at other universities and saying, hey, other universities do have these offices where people can go, where people can have their interests met. And I think that's how the Y ends up becoming an actual ombuds office, and people are realizing some of the value of it.
Yeah. Another thing that we have to look at is that the fact that in a certain, say, like you said, someone looks at something happening in one place and then they say, okay, we want to do this. Now, in that particular place, like in the last discussion we had, this conflict coaching came up a number of times. So if the fact that people look at it as conflict coaching, and then they say, oh, we must also have something where that aspect is happening, and then it moves into that direction. I don't know whether we wanted to go there, because we did say there was another role, but some person said that largely I'm doing conflict coaching. Someone else had, of course, different experiences. So we don't want that to, I mean, I would not want that to be, okay, so-and-so organization does it this way, and they've been successful, everyone is very happy, so that's what the role is going to be. Because when at the end of it, all of you are going to put out you need an ombuds, what all would you put on that, the post or the advertisement or whatever you're going to do, what all you'll put there, we'll have to also look at that, so we know what all you from all this discussion, what comes out there. So I'm just saying that let's look at it from not one particular organization having a ombuds who does this role. Let's open it out to see what is it that why that people might have had in various places and put it together. Again, whether I don't know whether it makes sense, but Liz is going to make sense of it. She gets from everywhere and puts it all together. Yes, Liz.
Yeah, right. Okay. No, I think that's a good point. Yeah, I think it's a good point that you're making. And I think what I'm about to say applies to most ombuds models, not even just different organizational ombuds and how they practice, but ombuds across the board. So I would say for the why, it's really having an opportunity to meet with people, and I'm gonna put some when in here as well, early, right? Like I really see, especially organizational, actually any ombuds model, as early dispute resolution, right? And I use the term resolution loosely because, as we've already discussed, like that's not what we're all about. Like we don't always resolve this. However, we can share and help through coaching or otherwise provide folks, individuals, as well as organizations, government entities, wherever we happen to be working, with information and skills to address things early, right? To hear things they may not otherwise hear, so that they can mitigate risk. And it could be the individual mitigating risk for themselves. It could be the organization mitigating risk for itself. Because going back to what Kira, I know Kira's gone, but what she was saying earlier about, when people get hung up on, well, how can I afford an Ombuds program? Like how does that impact my bottom line? Yes, helping, improve morale and improve and maintain relationships, increases productivity, yada, yada, right? And on it goes to impact the bottom line. You're also potentially reducing the number of lawsuits, right? You're mitigating litigation, right? If you've got someone coming in that has a discrimination concern, if you're able to resolve it informally before it goes to the EEOC, think of all the time and money you just saved that organization and the individual, right? It benefits everybody. So that's just one example. So I would say my why is really empowering people, like through providing information, through coaching, through skill building, right? Because we do conflict coaching. We also do a lot of, at least in our office, a lot of communication coaching, helping people. How do they go have that difficult conversation, right? How do they navigate that process or that system effectively, right? So they can get a more desirable outcome, right? And if we can empower people to do that early and informally, that is a huge why for everybody involved.
Yeah, look, I tell you, because I think with the discussion that we had last time, the concept was: do we need to break it up? Do we have to look at someone who has that conflict coaching mindset and someone who has a mediator mindset? Are those things required for the position? And if they are, can someone bring in both the aspects? And they can, why not? But for people to understand that I'm going to this person for this aspect of it, because if a role is being used for a certain aspect, so why not just put it as a separate aspect of it? And whatever word, look, again, words don't matter, whatever word you want to put it, but is it being confused because lots is happening there? And the major aspect of what is happening there is not being highlighted, or people don't know, so there is a mixture of things? Or is it that one aspect of it which should have happened is not happening because, like I said, you picked it up from somewhere else, and because you got a conflict coach in, and that is what that person does, and that's good at that, so people think of that role being for that aspect, for that activity. Again, I'm opening it out to discussion. I'm not saying that I know where it's going, but the when part of it is coming later, Liz, I know you might be in a hurry to leave, but it's going to happen. All the where, why, who, everything is going to happen. So Michelle, please, the why.
Sure. So Liz, Stacy, we might need to form a peer group at the end of this, because my notes I want to see everybody's notes at the end of this. I have arrows and colors and everything. So because it's a rich discussion and it's an important topic all around, whether we're talking about just this specific question that we're answering about the why or the larger conversation. There's a few things that I want to try and sort of, they're together in my head, and I'm going to attempt to communicate that out loud now and bridge them. But I think really what it comes down to for me in answering why is, what does having an ombuds communicate to the people that would be coming to the ombuds, whatever that context is? So often I think it's easy for ombuds to sort of jump right to talking about organizational ombuds, but there are lots of other kinds of ombuds. And if we're looking at elder care ombuds or other types of ombuds as well, it's equally as important in answering the question about why. What does having an ombuds communicate to the people of this setting, community, group, whatever it is? I hope that one day we come to a day where ombuds as a concept and role is so widely accepted that instead of asking what does it communicate to have an ombuds, we're asking what does it communicate if we don't have an ombuds? Aspirational right now. But I think with the way things have developed and unfolded, we're on our way towards that. I don't know how long, but I think one thing that, I want to sort of bring that idea of what it communicates, and that's an important why. Having that, I think, for many situations is enough to sort of pay off the salary of the ombuds. So, coming back to what Liz was saying, it's not just about part of it is preventing the cost of conflict. That's a big why. I think for many different circumstances, organizations, etc. That's a big part of the reasoning for them. But I think another reason is not only just preventing the cost of conflict, but why have an ombuds? Part of, I think, the ethos of that is normalizing conflict. I think most of us really believe that conflict is normal, inevitable, it happens. Yet still, many of us are taught that we should run away from it, or that it's bad, or that if we engage in conflict, it says something bad about us as contributors, as individuals, as family members, spouses, whatever, role we're playing in that moment. But having an ombuds helps normalize the presence of conflict and then changing the way that we view and navigate it. So this idea of really just becoming more constructive about it. And that's not just for engagement and productivity, but also for well-being and for making that shift in mindset. We're talking about mediator mindset, ombuds mindset, conflict coach mindset. I think it's also about just community mindset. And what does having an ombuds communicate to a community? Well, that conflict is normal and accepted and here to be dealt with in a constructive way. That said, I think the flip side is that conflict is also cultural. So I'm talking from a sort of Western standpoint. If I sort of switch hats now and I think about sort of my background as I'm a Lebanese person, and I would never practice conflict resolution and ombuds in Lebanon the way I do in the US. It just wouldn't work, frankly, for many reasons. And that is, I think, because conflict is cultural. We learn about conflict from sort of socialization and from the world around us and implicit experience. Most of us don't learn about conflict explicitly. So an ombuds helps to create that space for education and awareness, whether through coaching, mediation, training, and facilitation, etc. But I think it's also important for this conversation to understand that element, that conflict is cultural. And I went to an amazing sort of like a pilot training, so I don't know how much I'm allowed to say about it, but I will say one of the most important things I gleaned from it is the idea that some cultures are prescriptive and some are elicitive. And I know now, I realize how much I function as an elicitive ombuds practitioner, mediator, whatever, recognizing that the why have an ombuds will change culture to culture. So in an elicitive culture, the why is something. In a prescriptive culture, the why would be something different. Therefore, the outcome that we've talked about earlier would be something different. So I think that that's a really important element here. So when we talk about mindset, maybe we boil that down further and say, instead of mindset of mediator, ombuds, while all of those have relevance to this conversation, I think another part of it is just mindset of understanding. So I think that's a big part of the why as well.
Yeah. No, I think when you say culturally, because look, what happens is that again, the aspect of culturally, you think that this is not something that people want in this culture, and that is what they do in that culture. I'm saying let's just go beyond that and think that what is it that we would want it to be, and you'll find that every culture accepts it if it has a very basic humanistic approach to things. But only thing, let me just clarify to Liz that Liz, we can go on as long as you want. That's not time is not a factor. I didn't answer it there. Everyone should know time is not a factor. And Caitlan wants to sign off. So Caitlan, you want to say bye to everyone, or would you? This was
Sure.
just
Yeah, sorry, I have to log off, but it's been really a joy and honor to participate in this conversation with you all. Thank you for organizing it, and thank you all for your very insightful and thoughtful contributions. So
thank you for coming in, Caitlan. We are just on answering the why. There is so much more to answer there. So I think we should have had just one on the why. but I'm putting it out in the chat, what all we have to answer as we go along and how much we can answer here. So thank you very
I
much.
would literally be here all day. You know that, right? There's so much to talk about.
Exactly.
One person at the end answering the last question, because people I think are probably going to keep signing up.
So what we're going to do is what we'll do is each of those aspects maybe just put out a little bit right now, and then have another larger discussion on each of them on an elaborate basis. Of each of them can be discussed, and we'll bring in more voices into that. I mean, that's not an issue at all. So I've put out in the chat what all we need to answer. For any reason, if I have to take a break, because there's a certain festival happening here. So I might have to take a break and come back. You people can go around in that order on the question. The why is being answered right now. Then we'll move to the what. I'll be listening at that time. If I do go, I'll let you know. I'll be listening at that time, but might not. You won't be able to see me, but I'll be there. So yes, Stacy, the why.
After I answer this, I actually have to go too. So I just want to say thank you, Mediator Vikram, for this. And yes, this is such a great conversation, and it's been such a pleasure to be on with everyone. I love a good analogy. I don't know how other people feel that way, but a lot of times when I think about ombuds, I kind of picture the nerve system in a body that connects the brain and connects all the pieces. And I really think that's a good way to look at that, because everybody's in their own place and they need something to communicate. And I think that gets at the intrapersonal and the interpersonal, and then on into the systemic aspects that Ombuds really covers. And for me, I think why, from an organizational standpoint or a more communal standpoint, it's a bandwidth and a time issue, because we all do have what we're supposed to be doing. And we should all have that impulse to, as much as possible, listen and look for change and address needs. We don't have the bandwidth or the time or the purpose to do that at a broader level. So when Ombuds communicates, we know this is important and we're dedicating something to do this. And it doesn't take away everyone's responsibility to do that as well, but it's a place overall to do it. And we have that model in a lot of other places. We have a finance department that handles all of those issues. We have an HR department that handles all of those issues. Why would we not have a department that is dedicated to something so fundamental? And I just think Ombuds, for both the person coming in, they may not say it this way, but I think what they might be looking for is a place for agency, to regain their agency again, or to find out how, but also to re-participate or recommit back to community, because you do feel so alone when something is going on for you personally, or if you see something happening and that uncertainty that was talked about earlier of, is this actually happening? Am I right about this? Should I bring it up or not? Should I not bring it up? Because I am ready to push the big button that's going to explode this wherever that person comes in. So I really think a big why is to help individuals be agentic, but also to help an individual be communal. And we really can provide that. So I think there's a lot more. That's just the little piece that was really on my mind today. So, and I'm sorry to have to go, but I'm glad you're continuing to do these, and I hope to join again.
Yeah, we'll have another discussion. So thank you, Stacy. And of course, I would have wanted you to speak on all those things a little bit, but if you have to leave, you have to leave. So now what's going to happen is that Liz is being made the co-host. You are a co-host, and please just take the discussion round in this, the what part of it, and I'll come in and I have to just do that and come back. So please, the what part of it is what you're discussing, and I'm listening to it. You don't say anything offensive about me, okay? I'm there. It's all. I'm just warning you so that this doesn't come up later.
Now we can say all those things.
Okay, so basically, again, this alphabetical. So Jared is going to start on the what, and I'll be back.
All right, Jared. And I need to go soon too. I don't know about the two of you, but I didn't realize you were
I think it was a 30-minute invite, so I definitely didn't plan for like 2 hours. So, which is good though. It means we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, and there is a lot to talk about when you're trying to go over each of these, the why, what, who, how, all of them. I don't know. I felt like we have already covered a lot about the what, in some ways describing the practices that ombuds do, what it isn't, in terms of how it differs from mediation, how it's similar to mediation, and how we can use these to answer the question of why users or organizations may need the ombuds role. I suppose if I think more about the what, I feel that, ombuds is the role when we're thinking about today and Ombuds Day. It's just so varied. And I think that was talked about earlier about, there's different roles of ombuds, there's different needs of each organization that will determine what that individual ombudsman or ombuds office looks like, what they will be addressing, what they are concentrating on, whether it is conflict coaching or mediation, or in talking with individuals or talking with groups with each organization. And so I feel like I can't escape of, I'm realizing more and more how many different issues ombuds can address in terms of what their role is and the different situations in which their skills apply.
Yeah, that's great. How about you, Michelle? What do you think?
Wait, we're going out of order. I wasn't ready. Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to do that to you.
Totally okay. I think I'm feeling a little bit of a struggle with this part, because to me, and maybe I'm sitting here trying to analyze, is this a Michelle bias, or is this, is it somewhere, is it something else? I don't know. But, to me, I think the what and the who are inseparable to some degree. And I think that does come from my belief that who we are before being practitioners makes a difference in the what and the how and all of these things. I think what really Vikram's sort of intention is to get us to talk about it objectively. And that to me is hard because of what I believe around this whole idea of like, we bring who we are to the process. And that then, informs the professions that we take if there's something before doing this work. And then the sort of trainings that we select in order to become, more skilled in this work, et cetera. So to me, the what I think really varies in that sense. But if I was to look at it objectively, I think really the goal here is to offer the space and skills necessary to build capacity for managing, identifying, and preventing conflict. I think that's really the what, and that looks different place to place, situation to situation, organization to organization, culture to culture. So those needs, going back to what Jared was saying earlier, really focusing on the needs and interests, well, the needs and interests of any situation are different. So the what has to, I think, flex accordingly, but at its base, I think it's really just about creating that space for building capacity in those areas.
Good points. And I think I'm thinking about it more from like a higher level. So I'm going to go out there. I'm going to go out on a limb here a little bit. So when I think of the what, I'm going back to those like words, right? The words we use. We call ourselves ombuds or ombudsmen, and a majority of the population either doesn't know what that means or may have a preconceived notion of what it is, and we might be different because there are so many varieties, right? So I think it goes back to, for me, the what of, what model are we talking about? And who has the onus to understand that, right? So, in part, and I'm thinking out loud here, so bear with me, but like in part, I'm thinking as individual ombuds with our own programs, the onus is on us, right? To make sure that our messaging is clear, who we are, what we do, right? And what we offer. More globally, for, public awareness, maybe our associations, we have the International Ombuds Association, we have the United States Ombuds Association, we have the National Association of State Ombudsman Programs, which represent long-term care ombuds. Every state has one. And then there's the International Ombuds Institute. There's a variety of ombuds associations around the world, right? And so what responsibility do they have to help ensure clear messaging about and first even determining, right, the ombuds that are part of this model or part of this role, here is what that looks like. And setting, you have standards of practice, but even within our standards of practice, we know, I'm just going to use IOA, the International Ombuds Association, for example, even though most of us are organizational ombuds who belong to that, the adherence to those standards of practice vary, and I'm not finding fault. It varies for variety of reasons, and many are legit reasons. But if I just say I'm an ombuds, like the general public might not really, or even if I say organizational ombuds, does the general public really understand what that means and what I offer and how I operate? Because if they go to my office, or they go to Jared's office, or they go to Michelle's office, they may have a different experience. Now, of course, style and approach and all of that comes in, and I don't think anyone's going to regulate that, right? We're all going to be our own person and we're going to practice. And I'm just making an analogy. I know earlier Stacy was talking about analogies. The analogy, of course, because of my background is laws, I think of attorneys, right? I don't think it's a stretch to say that if I introduce myself as an attorney, at least here in the US, right? I'm putting my cultural, it's a narrow, I'm looking through it through the US. If I go to a cocktail party and introduce myself as an attorney, I think most people would have enough knowledge about the law profession to maybe do a follow-up question of, well, what kind of law do you practice, right? Because many people understand that lawyers doesn't mean you know everything about law, doesn't mean you do everything, right? We have niches, we have different practices. So wouldn't it be great if we got to the point where when we introduce ourselves as an ombuds, someone would say, oh, wonderful, like, what kind of ombuds are you? What kind of services does your ombuds program provide, right? I mean, so that's kind of what I would love, because I think there is also an onus, going back to the onus, not only on us as the ombuds, as our associations, as our professional organizations, but also as people to understand, try to learn enough and educate themselves enough so that is that common household name, right? Ombuds is no different than saying you're an attorney or a teacher, right? Well, what do you teach, right? Just because I'm a teacher doesn't mean I teach everything, right? So I don't know. I'm going on a. I'm just rambling. So I'll stop.
That's great. I love that you bring in the kind of the professional organizations part, because I think it does kind of play a key role in framing how other people view it and where it's going to go in the future. And I know that, let's say for the IOA, they have made or have relooked at, standards of practice or best practices in terms of, what should an ombuds office looks like, how should it operate? And I think that's, you're exactly right, Liz, in that, that's going to change, that's going to flex. And in terms of, trying to get specific with it, I think it can't be done unless you're looking at it from an individual ombuds perspective in many ways. And so I definitely agree with you there.
Yeah. I don't know, did we lose Michelle? So I was gonna leave at 9:30 because I have to get ready for my next Ombuds Day stuff. We're doing something for the office as well as I'm doing the EBA program today. And I'm not sure what happens if I sign out though, if you assign me host. I don't want to mess everything up for the two of you.
Assign another host, but in either case, I'm also.
Here's Vikram now.
I could hear you. I could hear everything that you're saying. Okay, so everyone, Michelle can be a co-host, and of course Jared can be. So I'll put all of them. But the important thing here is, I think what you were talking about when you walk into that office, what is it that I mean, of course there'll be different styles, but what is it? Largely what people are expecting. I think that's what going to be something we'll answer over time. So I think what we're going to do is we can briefly, of course, talk on all these. We'll have one discussion, which we'll call the why, what, who, how, when, and where of an ombuds or ombudsing. I don't know whether you use that term, but ombudsing, whatever. So we'll do that. Who wanted to leave? Liz, you wanted to leave.
I do need to leave.
Everyone wants to leave. I think everyone wants to leave, it seems.
Okay, a few more minutes, but
to leave are different things.
Okay. So in a way, of course, some things like Jared said we've already discussed them. So we've discussed them separately, maybe. So we've discussed on a broader thing. I think we've discussed everything. But I think what we need to do is fix up a meeting for talking about all this. Whenever I'll put it out, or you people want to give your preferences. Is there any preference in terms of time? End of October sometime? I'll put that if there's any particular date.
All right, let me just make sure I understand. So you're asking if we were to have a follow-up conversation with this same group, what would be an appropriate time frame?
Yeah. And of course, anyone else who wants to come in. I mean, it's always open for people to come in.
Maybe. I don't know, Vikram. I mean, I know not my understanding is, having been a classical ombuds, they don't all mediate per se. And I don't know if that's really what you want to hone in, but I think it'd be interesting to invite people from the different, like get a classical, a statewide ombuds, to get a long-term care ombuds. I'd love to hear how they would answer some of these questions.
And I think from all what I can understand is Liz knows everyone. So Liz is going to invite everyone into it. So when do you want to keep it, Liz? Please have a look at your calendar. 26th of October. Do you think 26th of October works?
26th, you're saying?
26th. Normally Wednesdays, Thursdays, what people are all right with.
Okay. Are you thinking morning? Well, morning again, right? Because this is nighttime for you.
Yeah.
For me, the morning of the 26th, I have a 2-hour window. Yeah, I could do the morning, the 20th. I don't know about others.
26th.
All right, Michelle.
But
I think
just
that may be available in that morning, but
all you have to tell
I
me
don't
is
know
when.
if you want a different voice. I've
No,
spoken with you a couple times, Vikram.
We need you,
I
Jared.
really
We
feel
need your voice. It's an important voice. But just tell me, when do you people move from Pacific Daylight Time to Pacific Standard Time? When does that happen?
The first week of November, I think
perfect.
6th, November 6th, I believe is when.
No, I'll tell you where the problem then comes in, because then 7 o'clock in the morning becomes by 8:30. Right now it was 7:30, so it makes it a little bit. Then it goes on longer, and I have, of course, a marriage to keep, and that mediation, I'll have a whole panel of mediators then to do that mediation. So that's why right now 7 o'clock a.m. Pacific time is perfect. So we're doing it on the 26th, right? 26th, done.
I won't be able to participate on the 26th. But I have a commitment on the 26th already, unfortunately.
Do you want to do 27th?
I could do 27.
27th, all right with both of you?
Oh, hold on. Let me take another look.
So this is a negotiation I have to do when it goes live, so that at least anyone else listening to it knows that it's going to happen if they do want to participate.
I may be able to make the 27th work.
So 27th, 7 a.m. Pacific time, right? And what we can do is, if you people have your notes put together, you can just send your top, whatever little, and I don't have to put them properly, just the basics that you put together. Send it to me, I'll put it all together. So let me see where all we've already gone and where else we need to go, and if some pointers have to be sent out. I normally don't like to send out pointers. They can obviously watch the discussion, not a problem. But just an idea of what you people have picked up from it. So it'll be interesting to see where we take it next time. Right? So any concluding kind of thing, Jared? Any concluding remarks?
Thank you so much. I also want to, Vikram, you've done a great job of organizing and bringing people to the table to have a good conversation. And I feel honestly really honored to speak with a lot of these colleagues and people that I know that I look up to in the profession, and definitely hear their voices, because I feel like it helps me grow and understand the ombuds field. I feel like I'm still new to it and still loving to learn everything that it has to offer. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jared. It's been wonderful speaking to you last time and this time. So Liz, your concluding remarks, anything?
To everything Jared just said, and happy Ombuds Day to everybody out there.
Perfect. Thank you. Michelle, anything? Any last message? So
just a big thank you. It's always such an opportunity to learn, to speak with other folks in the field who have such a wide range of knowledge, experience, and expertise. So appreciate your effort in bringing this conversation forward and bringing all of us together. Thank you. And thanks for everybody who was here today.
Thank you for participating, and everyone who's left. Thank you to them also to participate. And then we're seeing you on the 27th. It's going to be the what, where, what, who, how, when, where, whatever. I'll put it out loud.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Happy Ombuds Day.